Urban Youth Collaborative is a nonprofit 501c3 based in San Diego. Our mission is to support student-led Christian clubs on school campuses and connect local churches to those clubs. This show will be a weekly show starting in August to tell the story of all God has done through us, to encourage you, the listener, and help explain how this can be done wherever you are. Today we have a roundtable discussion for the show. Brent Hyden is the North Park Director for Urban Youth Collaborative and Student Ministries Pastor at New Vision Church. How are you, Brent?
Doing great. Thanks for letting me be here.
And Jason is the Spring Valley and El Cajon Director for Urban Youth Collaborative and Youth Pastor at New Seasons Church. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Alrighty, so for me, the reason I'm with UYC now is because I was a youth pastor at my old home church, and a student of mine was the president of the Christian club just down the street. And, you know, I figured why not be at her campus if she's going to be the president of the club. And so for me, I got involved with campus ministry, and it just made sense for me. And eventually Nate Landis, our boss, came to the school, Patrick Henry, and got connected with him. So I was volunteering with Urban Youth Collaborative even before I was on staff. And, one thing turned into another, and now a couple years down the road, I've been on staff with UIC. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about how you're connected with UIC and how you came on board?
You want to go first, Jason?
Sweet. All right. So similar situation. I moved to San Diego about 4 years ago and began my journey as a youth pastor at New Seasons Church shortly after that. And one of the conversations I had with my pastor was that 30 of my 40 hours needed to be on campuses because there weren't kids at the church throughout the day. They were in the school. So
your pastor's, that was your pastor's recommendation?
Yes, he said that you need to be 30 of your 40 hours should be there anyway because they're not here at the church. So again, it only made sense, just like same thing with you, Chris. I ended up starting out at Mount McGill where I met you, and I began serving there as a church partner as well, supporting the Bible club that was there. It had just gotten started. And after that, I had another conversation with Chris, and I was like, dude, you get paid to do this? How is that possible, bro? So I wanted to, learn how to do this because I wasn't I didn't have another job outside of the youth pastor role, and I was volunteering in that role. So for the first 2 years. So that was how I ended up getting involved and had a conversation with Chris. And from there, me and Dr. Nate Landis started praying about it. And then from there, I ended up getting hired on as staff. And so now I'm directing Spring Valley and El Cajon.
Nice. How about you, Brent?
My story's a little bit different because I was working most youth pastors never get a chance or an opportunity to work full-time at a church. Most youth ministry work is all side work or volunteer work, or you're you're getting paid for 12 hours and you're supposed to do 40 hours worth of work. And so I had been working for 15 or 20 years in student ministries before I started working at this church in North Park, and I was actually hired full-time to be a youth pastor. Now I'm trying to figure out what do I do with my day because I'd always been trying to figure out how to do all these things and make everything fit, but now I was just I had an office and I had a place and there was a budget. I'd never had a budget before. So I'd sit around and I'd be like, there's no kids. Kids are all in school till 3 or 4, so I couldn't even plan anything till the afternoon. So I'm I'm up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I got to be at staff meeting. What am I going to do between now and 4 o'clock tonight? I had nothing going on. So my pastor didn't tell me to go on campus. I was just I ain't got nothing better to do. So I was I might as well make myself available to somebody doing something.
Right.
And so it was on accident. I wish I could tell you it was an intentional desire for me. I'm a youth pastor. I got to be on campus. But it wasn't like that. It was I knew Nate as well. Nate and I became friends back in the 2000s. And so he just said, hey, I don't know what you're doing, but I need a bunch of pizzas taken over to a school for Hell Week for a football team. Do you have time to do that? And I was yeah, I was excited. I was at the fire station with all my gear waiting for a call to come.
Nice.
I was at my church just waiting for something to happen. So anyway, he called me and said, hey, you want to go do this? I was like, yeah, heck yeah. And then he's like, hey, I need somebody to preach a message at uni. Can you go up there at lunchtime on one day? And I was like, yeah. So every time he called me, I always tried to say, yeah, I'd be there. I had a mentor that told me as a minister, whenever you get asked to do something that has a spiritual consequence, you always say yes because it's always God's will. unless you've got a family, or if you've got, boundaries or something like that. But as far as like normal circumstance, if somebody ever asks you to teach the gospel and to share the good news that you have in you, it's a biblical mandate to be able to always be ready to do that.
Right.
So as a youth pastor, sitting around in my little station, waiting for kids to get out of school at 4 o'clock, like that's all I had to do is like pray, seek the Lord, study, get ready for a new game. But then I was able to go. So I just remember that Nate would call me, and I always tried to say yes. And so then he would always call me and be like, look, I always know you say yes. You don't have to say yes, but I need somebody if you want to go to San Diego High. I was like, I'm right there. When's it start? What do you need for me to do?
Nice.
And so it just kind of turned into something that was natural for me. And then I think it was the first time that I kind of realized, like, this is what youth pastors should be doing, but I had never been told that this is what youth pastors can do. And so I was like, this is awesome. So every single day I just felt like I had accomplished so much because I didn't have a Bible study that night, but I'd still seen, 30 or 40 kids and got a chance to preach the word. And I was like, I'm talking to kids on campuses. So it was pretty cool. So that's kind of how I got started. And then same thing. Then I went from working at that church to a church that was more urban that didn't have a salary for me. So then I had to figure out ways to do this. And so Nate was like, well, maybe we can do a partnership where you can still be a youth pastor and then you can also kind of work with UIC and kind of help raise your own missionary support to be able to be speaking to kids. And then I had a pastor that was like, yeah, definitely. Like, I expect you to be on campus.
Right.
And so then it just kind of worked out that way. So that's how I'm at New Vision now, and it's all good.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we're here together. Why don't we talk about what are some things that a parachurch, and specifically UIC, since we're all with UIC, what are some things that a parachurch can focus on for the future?
Parachurches, okay.
And so
things
since
that we're not already doing, or things that churches should be, or parachurches should be focusing on in all circumstances.
Yeah, I mean we can talk about all circumstances, but I think it'd be best for us to focus for campus ministry specifically. But we could, I think the principles would apply across the board. But what do you think we can be focusing on?
One thing that I think that going forward in the future, something to focus on, and parachurches across the board, is getting on campus with students, because that's where they're at.
Yeah.
And so whether that's FCA, Young Life, UIC, any of these other parachurch organizations, InterVarsity, anything like that, their goal is to be on campus with where the kids are at. And so I think one thing for the future that we can try to focus on is maybe seeing how we can serve the school and not only the students, but maybe there's something that we can do maybe during lunchtime, be an extra set of eyes on the play yard, or be an extra set of hands for the custodian to help pick up trash during lunchtime or after lunch, or how can we meet with principals and just pray with them?
Yeah.
So those are things I think that we can focus on in the future to just, I think, beef up what God is already doing and really allow the schools to know that we're not just there to do a Bible study with kids or support their club, but also seeing the bigger picture.
Support the whole school.
Right. And I think that's what Jesus did, is met the physical needs of the people, and then he gave them the spiritual part. So I think we can focus a lot on just meeting the needs of the campus.
That's good, because I know a lot of times it's really easy to get just stuck in, I got to get this Bible club good. I got to make sure these students are doing what they need to be doing as the president and vice president. They got, one of them's giving the message, I got to make sure they're doing that. And a lot of times we do kind of forget about, there's a principal there, there's teachers there, there's custodians there. So what do you think, Brent?
A couple things. I think, number one, that some of the parachurch organizations that we work with, we are a parachurch organization, but I think everyone's got a different mission. So, like FCA's mission, they're good at what they do, and I think they're crushing it in some of those categories. And then Young Life, I see what they're doing, crushing it. And so, as Urban Youth Collaboratives now, kind of like there, and we're kind of like all kind of cousins working together for the same goal and the same family, but we kind of have specific nuances in our ministries. Specifically us, we're called Urban Youth Collaborative. So for me, I think one of the things that I need to personally focus on, and maybe I throw this out to the rest of our missionaries, I need to be able to meet more student men pastors that are actually wanting to be in the game. Because since I knew Nate, and Nate knew me, and he knew that I was sitting around at a church that was paying me, and I had some time, he was able to lean on me a little bit and say,
Yeah.
hey, can you do this? He gave me the freedom to say no. But
Sure.
I think where I've come now is almost like you're a young Christian and all your friends are not saved because you're the first one, and then you've got this pool of people to be able to tell the good news to. But if you're second generation Christian or you've been in the church
Right.
for a while, you've kind of lost the non-Christian friends. So I'm not trying to say that other student ministry pastors are non-Christians. I'm trying to say that I feel like now I'm in the game for a while, and almost everybody I know is connected in some way to
Right.
student ministries. So I need to broaden my net to even find more student ministries pastors that don't know how to get on campus.
Nice.
Because I think they need to. If we're going to go to the next level, we need to get more people doing that work, and I need more people that, like Jason just said, that see the need, the integral need to be on campus with the staff.
Yeah.
What can I do to help? How can we be involved? And that way, when there is a crisis or there's a shooting or there is a death, drunk drive, whatever, then the school feels free to call us because
Right.
now we're the resident, experts in that area.
Right.
You know.
So I have something to add to that is when one of the schools that I support had a huge fight with some parents and everything, and one of the other youth pastors in the area that we support the club together, he called me and was like, hey, man, have you heard what's going on at the school? And I was like, no, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. There's a bunch of police cars and all this stuff. And so I immediately hopped in my car and drove down to the school. And soon as I got there, I was met by the principal that wasn't letting anybody go into the.
You can come in.
Yes,
We
so
need
he
you.
he told me to park in a non-parking zone. Park your car there. He said, go down there and talk. There's some of your kids down there, is his exact words. He said, there's some of your kids down there. Go talk to them. And so I was able to through building a relationship with the principal at this school, for him to see now there was a need for somebody to speak life to the kids in this situation that they were dealing with. And now that I came on the scene, he was able to say, all right, go ahead and go down there, while he's making sure everybody stays back and the rest of the community and the students aren't getting involved in it. He was able to say, go ahead and give me the green light. So it's huge.
And I think that story, like, it emphasizes my point. I think every local youth pastor close to a school should be the pastor of that school. That's my personal belief as a student ministries pastor. You should look at your zip code and find out, where's my junior high, where's my high school, where's my feeder grade schools, and you should have some sort of church ministry presence with the families at the grade schools that leads to the junior high, that leads to the high school, so you can help kids get to college. And so I think that student ministries pastors should be the experts in those fields. And I think that when we go to those schools, the school teachers and the principals should see us as allies with them, and not just, that's the religious indoctrination wing, coming to like morally whatever, teach our kids the 10 Commandments. Like, I think that even if teachers and principals can't say that, I think that in those crisis situations, they know that they need more people that are listening to kids, that love kids, that are there for, not just altruism and not just doing good things, but we actually believe that's a mission. And so that's why I just think that I need to help more pastors and youth pastors get to campuses, because then we can reach more schools, right? So Jason is already there, you're already embedded, and I'm not trying to take away that school from you, but how great would it be for you to find another church partner and a pastor to put there, so that you can continue to expand to other schools in the zip code. If we're going to reach, almost 300 schools in the San Diego Unified District, with good news and try to help, then we're going to have to really work on our strategies that way. And I personally, that's one thing that I know that our parachurch, me specifically, needs to work on is developing more student ministry pastor friendships to help throw them and get them into the game.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Throw them the ball.
I know that applies to any ministry, really. You need to be raising up leaders who can do what you do, because it's really easy for us to go in and do what we do because we've been doing it for so long, and we know how to connect with the students and with the teachers and the principal and all the admin at the schools. But if we don't get more churches involved, then we're not going to be able to expand the mission and vision that God has for us. So that's good. I think that's definitely needed. Do we anything else we can focus on maybe for the future, you think? Have we hit a good portion of things?
A lot. I mean, something we just didn't really mention, but I mean, obviously, every parachurch organization, normally by even the name of their titles, they're trying to help connect people to the church.
Yeah.
So we're outside of the church entity, not the greater capital C church, but
Yeah.
as far as like individual local fellowships. And I just think that's one thing that all parachurches kind of struggle with, ours included, is, and we talk about it all the time, how do we connect kids from a campus club ministry to a local church?
Yeah.
You know, and some of that's not letting them come to my church. You know, if I'm 3 zip codes away, I need to look to other churches, which
Right.
means that we need to be a little bit more ecumenical, which means that people need to do a little diligence. Like, is that a Bible believing, Bible teaching, you know, Jesus inspired church? Is this his church? You know, do I feel comfortable letting kids from that student ministries club go to there and be advertised to go to that church? But that requires a little work on our behalf. And so, like, I understand that, but I just think that that's something that parachurches are always trying to work on, that we can always keep on working on, is how do we connect people and integrate them to the local body so that it doesn't survive or fall based upon what we did.
Yeah.
You know, we should be one part of their spiritual experience, like just on the campus, but hopefully they do have a youth group, and hopefully they are going to camp, and hopefully they do have some discipleship, and hopefully they are getting the word, and hopefully they are being mentored. You know, but that's not the nature of our organization. So hopefully Young Life has got theirs, and they hit their nuance, and FCA has theirs, and they hit theirs. And so I just think as we work together, collaboration is going to be important so that we can make good handoffs. So I know that's one thing that I need to do better on. It's not my ministry. It's the kingdom, and what can we do as a parachurch to be more kingdom-minded.
Yeah, that's good.
One thing also that just came to mind is not only keeping these different clubs that we are supporting, bringing in other youth pastors to help support those clubs. What now happens is we do stretch our arms out a little wider, so we're able to cover a few more kids. A really good example of this, I think, is one of the clubs that I support. There's 3 different churches that are involved in it, in supporting the club, along with 4 different parachurch organizations that are involved in it, whether that's just bringing pizza or providing pregame meals or providing a youth group to go to. And so we've tried to make sure that on every level that we have the kids' attention, and as we're pushing them to churches, it's not, hey, just go to Pastor Jason's church, or hey, just go to this youth pastor's church. It's, hey, if you guys want to go to Pastor Jason's church, it's right here. Yeah,
this
if
is
you
over here.
this one,
all
right?
Places. Yeah.
So whatever area you're in, you're able to go and hear from God. I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of touch on real quick is when we are getting the kids to the church, making sure that there is, like Pastor Brent just said, some discipleship happening.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is sometimes these kids will never make it to a church. And some of those kids that we're dealing with we're gonna have to make the time during outside club time to disciple these kids, or bringing them into our homes now and discipling these kids and making a better effort to disciple them. So I think that's one thing that, for me personally, I feel like God has really been putting on my heart a lot more to do, is just making sure that I'm making the time to disciple kids, whether that is through youth group, through youth group, or through something that we're doing at my house, or getting them involved with another group that's doing some discipleship stuff. So being really intentional about the discipleship that we are allowing to getting the kids to, I think is huge.
Yeah, I think another part to what we can focus on, what we can improve upon, one thing to focus on would be, not just getting youth pastors involved, but how can we incorporate, just the general church member, and, maybe they can pray, at the very minimum for a school that's right down the street, or, maybe they can do some mentoring, because a lot of our church members aren't really going to be able to take their lunch break, or, wherever they are. They're not going to be able to make it to a lunch at a school. And so maybe finding some ways to get more people involved. And maybe that's, financially supporting us so that, even though they can't do the ministry that we can do, at least they can kind of help support some of us who are actually doing it. And so I think, getting our vision out there of, this is what we are, this is what we're about, and showing how unreached these campuses are, getting that vision out to more people is a great thing to focus on.
Agreed.
So what about what are some things that a church specifically can focus on for campus ministry?
I think first is understanding the need for it.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of, well, I don't want to use the word a lot, but there's churches out there that don't understand the need of reaching the kids that aren't already there. Mm-hmm. Maybe the kids that are already at the church, their parents are there, they're the tithers, they are the ones that are supporting the church, and so we want to make sure that those kids are the ones that we are ministering to. We're meeting the needs of them, when in all actuality, there's 1,500 kids down the street at the school down the block from your church that they need Jesus just as much as the kids that are already there, right? So I think that it's huge that that churches begin to see the actual need to go into the schools and catch wind of what's going on there, so that now we can meet the needs of the students that are actually there. One thing that we've done with our church is we believe God has called us to reach out 7 miles from our church.
Mm-hmm. 7 miles? You trying to take over our church too?
That will be in that
that's a
area
big
now.
expanse.
So, but within
most churches
that,
do 1 mile, 2 miles. New season is like 7.
Yeah, we gotta do 7. So,
spiritual,
right? It's a good spiritual number, right? So, so reaching out in those 7 miles, but doing even more, getting down to the demographics of that 7 mile radius, and seeing, for instance, in our 7 mile radius, from ages 14 to 17, there's roughly 4,200 students.
Wow.
4,200 kids. My youth room right now can seat about 40 kids. So what that means is there is...
you say 4,200 or 42,000?
42,000.
Yeah,
I said
there's not 4,200. I was like, no, that's not
no,
true.
I said 4,200. Yeah.
So
So 42,000.
Like, It's almost 50,000 students in that range. Because I'm like, in North Park, we're about 20,000 just in North Park.
Just in North Park, right. So in that number of kids, 42. we have to seat 711 kids per seat in our youth room.
Wow.
So kid on top of kid on top of kid, which
700
means
high.
700 high on each seat, right?
I'll buy you a seat. So you have one seat, so you can lower that number a little bit.
So what we need to do now is see the need of reaching kids on these campuses, but now when that happens, I'm not trying to seat 700 kids per seat. These different churches, whether that's a mile or whatever, or saying we're just going to reach just the kids at our school, the middle school and high school, then that now takes some kids away from the group that I'm trying to reach. And so now, again, our arms broaden, and we're able to cover more kids when the churches are seeing the need and getting that specific. That's been a number that's been etched in my head, that I know that there's 711 kids per seat in my youth room right now.
711, hey.
Yeah, that I know that I can't personally do on my own, or even as our church. And we're expanding, and we still won't be able to do it. So once we get a youth room that can seat 100 kids, we would still be at
still need a lot
400 and something kids.
A lot more seats,
per seat. So I think it's seeing the need and actually getting there and hearing from it, hearing about it.
Yeah, and I know for me, when I'm trying to get a new church involved, I try and be clear with them that I'm going to pretty much focus on these student leaders, and not that they shouldn't focus on the student leaders, but trying to get a church to focus on, hey, look, there's a ton of other students here. There's no way I'm going to be able to reach all these students. Right. I'm getting to a whole bunch of other campuses. And so I think one thing a church can focus on is, and this ties in just with what you're saying, is look at all the students that are here. Maybe try and just focus in on 1 or 2 campuses. Don't try and do 10.
Right.
But try and focus in on just 1 or 2, and really try and reach all the students that are there. So, you got anything, Brent?
Yeah, this question is a little overwhelming. We
Yeah.
need a whole podcast just for this one question.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But 2 things that kind of came to mind. Number one is I think I spend more meaningful conversation with kids on campus about spiritual things than I do in my youth group. I might be embarrassing to say. So I'm throwing that out there to all youth pastors. If you listen to this, like, do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Like, I have better spiritual conversations with non-Christians on campuses than I do in my youth group. Because my kids in youth group, they don't respond. They don't get agitated. Like, maybe I'm preaching wrong to them. I don't know. But when I say something on a school campus that's a little bit controversial and I ask for opinions, dude, everybody's trying to, like, chime in. Yeah. And then I'm able to focus on, here's what the Bible says. Like, whether you like it or don't, here's what the Word of God says. Like, you're going to have to do some heart searching about this. Right. In youth group, I just get crickets. And even the same kids that were at Bible club earlier that day that were happy to pop off, now they're in youth group, and now they're with the Too Cool with Jesus Club or something. I don't know. They're afraid or they're just out of it or not connected. So
maybe they've heard it so many times.
Yeah, maybe so. But I just think it's interesting how that when they're surrounded with other Christians in that room, there's a different feel and different. At least in my church, it feels differently. The same kids on their school campus, on their turf, they're more comfortable to do whatever they're going to do. Right. So I enjoy seeing them. Like, it's the difference between, and I've never been on a safari, but it's the difference on being on a safari and seeing something in the wild and then going to San Diego Zoo and watching a bear sleep in a cave. Like, bears weren't, I mean, they sleep in caves, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to see the thrill of it, you got to go get some photography gear. You need to go crawl out into some place and go hide somewhere for 4 or 5 days until you can actually see a bear tear apart an animal and be like, that's what bears do. You know what I mean? And so, like, and I'm not trying to compare our kids to animals that tear people apart, but I'm saying,
kind of,
but kind of, but I'm saying, if you want to know what a kid looks like, you can't know what a kid looks like coming to your church because they call you Pastor Brent. They stop cursing. Like, most of our kids got 3 different personalities. They got a family personality. They have a school personality. They have a church personality. If they're church kids, and so, like, as a youth pastor and a student of culture, like, I love to see where the kids are, and the same kids that will come to youth group aren't the same kids that come to, like, Faith Club, and some of them cross over, but I got some kids that won't come to Faith Club at all, and that come to my church, and I'm like, why aren't you there? Like, well, I already did church. Like, I already paid God off this week, and I'm like, man, even the kids at Faith Club that don't know Jesus understand God better than you, and you grew up in the church. It's really, really sad. So I think churches have a huge opportunity to get involved, and what can churches do? I just think that you can actually get where kids are and see what, you know, we come up with these cleverly crafted sermons, but if it doesn't touch where the kids are, and if we're using illustrations that are old or tired, it's just like, just get there to where the kids are, like, surprised that you know their language. Right. I had a kid tell me at a camp, she didn't even agree with what I was preaching about, but she came and she's like, oh, I just can't believe that you're so old and you talk like you understand us. She's like, how do you do that? Is there, like, a dictionary that you use to try to find out who we are?
The Urban Dictionary.
And I'm just like, you're not even that hard. Like, you don't, your terms aren't scripted. Right. You don't own them. They're just repatented from my generation. Mine repatented them from the generation before. But if you're not on campus to hear kids and see them in their natural environment, like, you don't ever necessarily know how your kids really are. You know? I ran into another family at church. I mean, at a 99-cent store, because that's where I shop. And and I talked to the mom, and I don't know how the mom started talking to me, but she had, like, a teenager with them. And I was like, hey, what school you go to? And said a school of one of my kids from my church that goes to that school. And I was like, oh, so-and-so go. One of my students goes to that school, whatever. And he just rolled his eyes. He went, oh, he go to church? Like, said that. Like, he goes to church. And I'm like, just busted him out in the middle of the 99-cent store trying to buy sweet condensed milk for Thai tea, and just got busted out. And the mom's like, why would he be embarrassed to go to church? The mom totally didn't get it. Why the kid wouldn't go to a Bible club, and then why he doesn't participate in Christian things. She's like, oh, because, Mom, not everybody's the same at church as they are at home, you know, whatever. And he just totally called out my kid. You know, and so I'm just like, and I know that about him. I know he's shady. Like, I see him, and, like, he got that little Christian smirk, and you're like, man, you're sinning right now in church. Why you think it just, whatever, you know? And so anyway, I just think it's important for churches to stay where the kids are. You know, I mean, Nate is coming out with his book next month, right? You know, and like, you know, fish swim in schools, you know, our kids are in schools. Like, that's that, you know, if we're fishermen and men, then we got to be where the fish are. Right. And how can you call yourself a youth pastor and then just be in an empty room full of kids? Right. You know, and I'm not saying counting chairs is bad. I'm just saying, like, if we all got there, like, we should all be broken by that. Exactly. Like, I should be looking, and I can't reach 42,000 kids. Right. Like, I can't even reach the 2,000 at San Diego High where my daughter goes to school. Like, I'm not even a good pastor of the 2,000 kids at San Diego High. And if I could just focus 100% of my time there and reach all of her friends and let her reach her friends, like, equip her, empower her to be that voice of Christendom, because they're not going to listen to me because I am old. And so I just think it's a really interesting thing that churches can be focused on. So that's number one, but I talked a lot, so we'll forget about number two for another podcast.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is a big question. Well, why don't we jump into what are some common misconceptions about campus ministry? And I know the biggest one, obviously, is, well, is that legal? What about the separation of church and state? So, I mean, maybe we can talk about that a little bit, but maybe we could even go deeper. What do you guys think?
I just got in talking, bro. You got to go. I'm tired of hearing myself.
So, one, definitely that's the big one. I think a lot of not only church goers, but just people in general in the community don't know that this is happening because of the separation between church and state. The really cool thing about the organization that we work with, or any other parachurch organization for that matter, is these are student-led clubs that we come in and support. And so the student starts the club and invites us in. And so that's why now we're able to be on campus and support the students, the student leaders, and all the students that are in the club. And so I think that's our in to getting into the clubs, is being invited in. So the misconception of the separation of church and state isn't so much that we can't do it, it's how we're doing it. Yeah. And I think it's because we are invited in that now it makes it okay for us to be there. The other thing is that I think another misconception is that the students from the faith clubs come just for pizza. I think that's one. I think it's a misconception. I think depending on the size of your club, there's a large number of kids that do come just for pizza. Yeah, which is great, because I've really been leaning towards there has to be a draw for students in this day and age. There's something that draws the kid to the Bible club, whether that's their girlfriend that goes, whether that's the pizza, whether that's the cool youth pastor that's supporting the club,
or
whether
calling them, they're growing, like that happens too once in a while.
Yeah, and so and then there's other kids that feel God calling them to the club. And I have asked this question at the club one time to a young lady that comes regularly. I said, why do you continuously come back? Like, why do you come back every week? Is it because of the pizza? Is it because, like, the messages? Or what is it? Why do you personally come back every week? And she looked me in the face and said, because I just recently accepted Christ, and I want to get as much Jesus as I can. And so that was super encouraging for me as someone there supporting the Bible club. And so I think there's a misconception that everybody's there for the pizza.
Wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons.
And my club leaders think that all the time. They get mad that all these lost kids coming in. Like, I've been to so many clubs where the club leaders are like, stop bringing pizza. Too many kids coming in here for the wrong. They ain't listening to you. Yeah. And they're the angriest ones. I was like, man, you guys are already full-fledged church denominational members. You ain't even signed up yet, and you already there. Like, it's so funny how our humanity does that. Like, right? Like, last year we got saved, and this year we're like the gatekeepers of the pizza. Yeah. Man. So I'm with you, man. I see that 100%. Yeah. I just also think that people don't know the stories. Like, there's not a whole lot of forums for churches to know. We have this, like, sheep mentality that the wolf is coming in and just stealing us, and we're all just dying. And, like, people just think they come to church to be like, oh, all right, who got snatched this week? You know, and like, our numbers are dwindling and we're struggling. But that's not necessarily where I live. I think evil's always there. I think darkness is always going to be around. But I think that God is victoriously changing people all the time. And so we're all about like the victimization. I mean, it's just very, very popular in the social world that we live in. Right. We're all about the victimization, but we're not about the success stories that counter that argument. Sure. And so it's really easy to point at somebody that just got shot, but we're not talking about the 500 kids that just got baptized that chose Jesus this week, that went from darkness to light. And yeah, a school shooting's terrible, and you get a chance to see that, and it hits all the news, but none of what we're doing is hitting the news. Right. So I actually had a family at a church yesterday tell me, what are you every single week you guys do this? How come people don't know? And then they sat down. Then they were trying to say, you need to get a report out. You need to call the news. You need, like, that's good stuff. And I was like, yeah, but it happens every day, so it's not really news. Yeah, like, right. But I see it happen every day, so I'm not surprised when kids give a life to the Lord, or a student gets up and gives their testimony in front of 50 kids. Like, but people are like, oh, yeah, kids couldn't do that. I couldn't do that when I was in high school. And I'm like, we just have. I think this generation of churchgoers, sometimes they don't know where the kids are. Number one, we already talked about that. They don't know even how to interact with them, but they don't even know that there's that there's young people making great choices,
Right.
you know? And so at some point, that's a misconception, is that like, I've got 10 schools that I go to on a somewhat regular basis, and on every one of those schools, there's between 10 and 50 kids that are making good choices every week, you know? And that might not be 2,000 kids, but out of 2,000 kids, if you got 50 kids in a room making good choices, and none of that's getting any radio play, none of that's getting any podcasting, none of that's getting any, you know, there's not YouTube videos about how cool Bible Club was today, you know? So I just think that there's a disproportionate amount of negativity that's projected about our generation, about not my generation, but the kids that we're working with in 3 generations below me. But I just think that that's just something that people need to know.
Yeah.
And so I had people all day yesterday saying, you know, call KUSI, do it, and they're not going to care. Like, maybe they will. There might be some people that would want to talk about that, but we don't want to like blow it up and exploit it so that the school is now on blast,
Right.
and now we can't do Bible Club because now we won this little media war that ends in one cycle, and now we can't be on club anymore, right? So I just rather have great stories continuing to happen, and I just want people to know that there's great stories every single day. Every day at every school, there's a great victory and a great story that happens.
Yeah.
You know, and people that we just – there's not enough social media for us to – it would just be blowing everybody's social media. This happened. And maybe we need to do that. Maybe we need to flood the market with great stories, you know, and so that people know that there's something that's going on that's good on campuses.
Yeah.
But
I think another misconception, too, a lot of youth pastors will think that just because their kid is, you know, maybe a strong leader in their youth group, they're going to be a strong leader at their campus club. And, you know, what I've seen a lot is...
It's not one-to-one.
Yeah, a lot of the times, you know, either the student will go to youth group or the student will go to Bible club. They won't usually go to both. And you were talking about that a little bit earlier. And I think that is an interesting misconception, which kind of ties into the last question a little bit, too, is how can we focus on those kids then that just think, you know, this is enough for me to go to youth group, even if they're a strong student leader. You know, I think that's an interesting dynamic. And maybe it's, you know, they like the comfortability of the church where, you know, they don't have to really, you know, there's comfortable people who are going to kind of agree and accept what they're saying, but then when they get to the school, you know, there's all these other kids who are going to be like, what you're doing is stupid. You're a Jesus freak, you know, and so maybe that's a part of it too, is kind of dealing with, and this is a little bit with what you were talking about too earlier, Brent, with the, you know, kids kind of have different personalities, and and so that's definitely a misconception I've seen. So anything else, any other misconceptions that we see about campus ministry?
Just that it can't be done. It can't be done.
Yeah.
Right now, like people were freaking out yesterday, and I was telling all my folks, as long as we follow the equal access clauses that the same other groups on campus, religious or non-religious, any club that's on a campus, as long as we follow the rules of the school and we're there to benefit the direction of the student body, you know, and we believe spiritually, just like the chess club believes that you're helping intellectually, and the robotics club is teaching them technology. Like we have a message, like we can't hide that. I believe that kids getting connected to Jesus is going to be inherently a great thing, and it's going to change their life forever, and it's going to make them better students, better club leaders, better chess players, better robotics engineers. I believe that Jesus will affect all that. So I just think that it was amazing that so many people were so surprised that we can do this. And then one person, even after I got done speaking in a church, came up to me and said, so what do you do? Do you go outside the school campus with a bullhorn and just do it outside? And they still didn't understand that I go in the classroom. They're like, how is that even possible? And I was like, the same way that the Muslim club can meet on campus and the GLBTQ club can meet, and all the rest of the letters included to that, and like how the chess club can meet. Like, as long as clubs can meet and we follow the same criteria, then there is equal access to the students. I said there will be a time probably that outside leadership or campus help, you know, like us supporting kids won't be able to go on site. But when that happens, it'll happen across the board. Then no more Muslim imams will be able to come onto campus to talk about the Quran, and no more activists for LGBTQ will be able to come on and talk about that. So once some leaders and adults are like kind of banned or taken away, then we're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
So as long as there's one club, they can have all clubs. And some schools, and I said, charter schools don't have to do that. So if they don't have clubs, we don't have an access to get on because that's already in their charter. We don't do outside, clubs for whatever purpose. And they're private. They can make that choice. So I just think that's some misconception that even after speaking at it, people still didn't understand that we can still be there where kids are, as long as we're invited.
Yeah.
We can't push our way on there.
Right.
Like we're not outside picketing. We're out there we've got people saying, please come and teach us something that our schools aren't teaching us.
Right.
Nice.
That's good.
Well, what are some of the benefits of doing campus ministry? And I know the biggest one.
Pizza every day.
Oh man, what a diet!
Our dad bods.
Yeah, that's right. I know. The biggest one
from the pizza. I've never eaten so much pizza in my life.
I bet.
My doctor told me I need to change my diet, and I connected it to what I do, and he says you need to change your work.
Oh gosh.
I said, as a youth pastor, I can't not eat pizza.
That's
I would
funny.
seriously starve.
Right.
And he's like, well, you're seriously going to die unless you stop eating pizza. So I was like, oh heck.
That's funny.
We need to take him offering for a diet.
Real talk
for Pastor Brent.
So what are some benefits of doing campus ministry? And I know it ties right in with UYC's vision is bringing those students to church. That's the biggest benefit. But are there any other benefits that we see from doing campus ministry? Of course we do. But what do you think?
I just wasn't talking.
So one of the things, I have a couple different stories, and I'm gonna try to make these brief. Is one is building relationships with the students on the campus. I think that's huge. For a lot of youth pastors, we don't do a lot of outreach to bring kids into our youth groups, or we may empower the students to do that and share with them and teach them how to go out and share their faith. But in all actuality, it's not a huge influx of kids coming in each week because of the evangelism that our students are doing. And so for us to get on campus and build relationships with kids, the saying is they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So we're spending time with these kids, not only at the faith clubs, but going to their football games, basketball games, volleyball games. I went to a soccer game last year, which was cool to see because one of the young ladies at the Bible club said, I have a game this week.
Nice.
And so I just showed up and was able to take a couple pictures and send it to her and stuff like that, and was really cool. So building relationships, I think, is huge for us as youth pastors and church, because now we're able to invite the kids back to youth group and say, hey, if you guys enjoy what we're doing here at the club, we do this also every week at our church. So I think that's one thing. The other is getting kids from the school plugged into events and things that you're doing at your church. So really cool story. About 2 years ago, one of the Bible clubs that I support at Mount Miguel, there were two girls that every year we do a true love weight ceremony, and which is a vow to be pure until you enter into a biblical marriage. And so these two young ladies, along with another young lady who goes to the youth group, and she was at the Bible club and told her friends about it. We do a 6-week course at the church. And so they came to the church for the 6 weeks, and then they were able to participate in the True Love Weight ceremony at the end of it. And I thought that was huge, because that's exactly what we're trying to do with getting the students connected back to the church. And so for something so significant in a young person's life to take a vow of celibacy until you're married is huge. And so for us to be a part of that was awesome. The other thing that we did about 3 years ago with Mount Miguel as well is we were able to host a baccalaureate for their graduates. So at our church, because of the relationship that we had built there with not only the students but the principal at the time, she had said, we would love for you guys to host our baccalaureate. And so we were able to get the kids to the church and provide not only a message for them and their parents, but also to recognize them just in graduating high school and doing something for them, and allowing the church to recognize that as well. So I thought those three things are huge in just the partnership between the church and campus ministry.
That's good.
It's a lot. Well, I think one of the things, I think you kind of hit on some of this, so it's not really a new thought, but I just think that there's so many of the kids that we see, like, for instance, my senior pastor, Pete Contreras at New Vision, he sees himself as being the pastor to the zip code, not the pastor of the church on the corner. And so he calls himself the pastor of that area. So whether people or not acknowledge that or not, his vision, he believes that he is a shepherd to the people of that part of North Park, University Heights, like where we are on Park and Elkhorn Boulevard. So whether people ever come into the church or not, he still feels the responsibility to at least speak life and love to the community in Jesus' name to the area. And hopefully, if there were, God forbid, a tragedy of some sort, then there would be people coming from the neighborhood, like these people have been here since day one.
Right.
Before North Park was cool, we've been there doing work,
Right.
And so now hopefully people would say, do you have something to contribute to the conversation? So I think likewise, for me as a youth pastor in an area and looking at 3 or 4 local high schools, so between Hoover High School, San Diego High School, Alba, Roosevelt, E3, like all those schools in our little corridor area that I'm kind of in charge of and work with trying to help campus ministries, I see those kids as like they need to be shepherded. And if they're not going to church, I ain't trying to steal them from your church. Or I know you got a 7-mile radius and you taking all the kids, but I'm just saying, like, I just want them to be connected to like an authentic Jesus, Bible believing, whatever church. But for all those other thousands of kids that don't got a connection, they need a touch point. And so I don't know at what point God's going to call them. I don't know at what point the crisis of the pain of this reality of life is going to trigger them to call out to what's next and where's God and how is is there a spiritual connection? But I know that we've had a number of kids from San Diego High School participate in stuff like baccalaureates and whatever, beach bay days. Like we do a bay day. You don't have to be saved to come to the bay. Like you're San Diegan, get yourself to the bay. I'll put you on a jet ski and an inner tube and throw you around and it'll be fun. They don't have to be saved to do that. But if they're doing that in connection with a pastor and a church, then that's a first-time experience. They're never going to forget the first time they went on a jet ski and got thrown on an inner tube, right? And so, and so once again, you said like there's always a catch, or like whether it's pizza or whatever. Like there's a draw camp. We're doing zip lines and we're doing bungee this and we're doing paintball this, and some kids have never got a chance to have the opportunity. So I'm happy to provide the opportunity, even if the kids don't go all in with Jesus, knowing that God is, like the Bible says, that there's the planters and there's the waterers and then there's the harvest, and so like I don't know what part I'm going to play, and I wish as a youth pastor, like I had thousands of people come to the Lord every day, but I can guarantee you this. It would be thousands and thousands of other people that have done the planting and the watering. So just because I'm reaping some sort of a harvest of souls that are coming in that belongs to God, and it's all His glory anyway, it's only because there's been other pastors in the trenches doing work and families that have been loving, disciplers that have been investing, mentors that have been like leading. And so like you just get there for the end part of it. That's like you just can't celebrate the end results and not see that there's all these other trains that have been going on. So I just think that one of the biggest benefits is that I get a chance to see kids. They get a chance to come. They might not come to my youth group, but I'm hopefully seeding the ground with positive Word of God, so that at some place in their life, after high school, after whatever, there's still that number that come to the Lord later in life. I know the statistics say that most people do so by their 18. So, like, I want to draw the net right now on all of this high school seniors that graduated San Diego High. I'm like, there's only 50 kids coming to the Bible club. 2,000 kids just left. I'm like, oh my gosh, we had like 95% failure rate, like at San Diego High. But at the same time, I hope that the word has gone out, and I hope that's a huge benefit, because hopefully we're a connection point, and that might be the only time they've ever gone to church. And at what point are they going to reintegrate into church life? And our society is steering people away from church more and more. So if church is already on the outs, and if we're the only church they're going to get on a campus ministry, they might think, there was that one time there was some people talking about Jesus, and that might be the closest thing they ever got to church. But I hope and pray that that's a investment in the kingdom, because that's a seed that's been planted that I don't think that Satan can take away. That's my prayer, is that it doesn't get taken away, so it actually sprouts and produces. So I think it's a huge advantage of being in campus ministry. That's where the kids are. So I believe student pastors got to be there. Got to get there.
Any final thoughts before we go? No?
Nope.
Crickets.
Crickets,
Get her
I
done.
guess so. Well,
It's like a youth pastor asking somebody to
That's
close in
exactly.
prayer.
oh, man.
You got the one kid. I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Hang on, one more
Fine.
thing. Jesus.
Well, UYC's 9th annual School Beautification Day is coming up. It's going to be August 11th and 18th. If you are interested in getting involved, we would love to have you. In August of 2017, we helped mobilize hundreds of students and faith-based volunteers for beautification projects at 24 San Diego County campuses. The 8th annual, this would be last year, cleanup effort culminated when workers poured into National City, downtown, Southeast San Diego, City Heights, Santee, and Oceanside. Vibrant, fresh paint, green gardens, and neighborhood unity testify about God's restoration in God's kingdom. As relationships of trust grow on campus, a painted door becomes an open door for future ministry, opportunities that benefit kids. So if you're interested to get involved with School Beautification Day, you can call this number 619-786-0278, and we would love for you to come and see what it's about and help beautify the local school that's near you. Well, for Brent and Jason, I'm Chris, and thank you for listening to the UYC Show. For next episode, we will have Nate Landis on to discuss how you can get involved with Urban Youth Collaborative. Visit our website at uyc.org. That's the letter U for urban, Y for youth, C for collaborative.org. And please consider making a monthly donation on our secure site so that we can expand the work that God has called us to. It would greatly be appreciated. If you have any questions, email us at podcast@uyc.org. God bless you and have a great day.